I am the White Dragon,
And this is Cerberus.
and you are listening to the Beyond Unreal Podcast, episode 19.
Woohoo, 19!
Yeah, I know it's been a few weeks, but we are back. Lots of stuff to cover. Always want to mention that we do our Frag BU every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We've been doing it past 3 weeks. People have been showing up. I've really enjoyed it. Most of the footage that we're going to use in the podcast is from Frag BU. Keep coming. We're having a really good server. I'm really happy about it. So keep it up, guys.
Yep.
All right. So going into the changes. So the first thing is 4.5 preview in the build right now.
Yeah, so basically they wanted to get some of the artificial intelligence stuff that they've been doing in 4.5 into Unreal Tournament. But 4.5, I believe, is going to come out this next week. And so for the past couple of weeks, they've been running off of the 4.5 preview, which is really just the latest code that's available in Git. And because of that, it's been hard to test the changes because you can't really run 4.5. You had to compile the editor from source in order to try the new changes. So that's been a challenge. But yeah, that is a big upgrade, and artificial intelligence is something that they've been gradually adding to the latest builds.
All right, so let's talk about the bots. So they are in there. They don't work on all of the maps, but on some of the maps, if you go into the console and you type force add bots, and then you have to specify which team they're going to be on, which if it's deathmatch, it doesn't matter. But so force add bots, and it will add the bot in there, and they're quite hilarious.
Well, Jim was saying that they'll run between the nav points, and they sometimes will spin around and stuff on each nav points.
So you no longer have to specifically place the navigation points in the level anymore. It will automatically create them and do the bot pathing for you. But on some of the maps, they haven't created them, and there's still some funky stuff with them. But for instance, in Nick Test, they work pretty well, at least. And they'll at least go around and try and pick up things and stuff, but they don't understand the game at all.
Yeah.
So they would actually be really effective if you just gave the bots the impact hammer, because 80% of the time they just walk towards you and they won't stop until they're touching you. So if you pick up the flat cannon, you can just smear them everywhere. It's great. I'm sure slowly they'll start to teach them the rules, like here's how you do a shot combo. And
yeah.
So with the 4.5 upgrade, I do want to mention there is a lot of developments on the mouse acceleration issues. So everybody's been complaining about the mouse acceleration. I've kind of gone back and forth between I can feel it, I can't feel it. Right now I can't really feel it, although I have noticed my mouse accuracy is just not as good this update.
What I have noticed on my own machine is that if I can keep my frame rate over 65 frames per second or so, that I don't really notice the issues myself. I don't pay enough attention to know what they are, I guess. But if it starts going below 60, it really starts to drag. Like it feels like the movement on the screen is dragging behind where I'm moving the mouse. It does feel a little bit better this build than it did last build for me. But it still seems pretty random. Like for some people, the mouse just feels absolutely terrible. For other people, it feels just fine. The other thing that I found out today is that the Linux build seems to have better mouse tracking than the Windows build. And there is a difference there between how the input tracking is done. So I don't know if that gives any indicators as to what the problem is really, but that's kind of where it sits right now.
Yeah. So the last thing that I heard from it was that Epic has been looking into what has changed for this build and if it's related to the 4.5 upgrade, because a lot of people have been complaining about it. I was talking to Hypno today and he was saying I basically can't play anymore because the mouse is so bad for him. It's anybody's guess right now what changed, but everybody seems to feel that the 4.5 upgrade did something to the mouse.
Yeah, and Epic has said too that they've noticed some kind of change, but they're not exactly sure what it was. It also seems to be somewhat tied to what sensitivity people use. Like
We both use pretty high sensitivity.
Yeah, I mean, comparatively speaking, I mean, I leave my slider about 25% of the way. That's where I put my sensitivity at. Most of the people that I've heard complaining, I believe, use the lowest sensitivity they possibly can.
Yeah.
And that may have some effect on it too. And that's something that I guess I should try. But where I put it right now which is, like I say, about 25% on the slider. I can feel it if the frames get too low, but I can't really feel it as long as the frames are high enough. And I don't have a super great monitor that does 120 hertz or anything. That might make a difference. Mine, I think is just a 60 hertz monitor. But, there's so many different factors that it's probably a pretty difficult problem to track down.
Oh yeah, it could be a while before we figure this one out. I mean, I've looked at it several times. A lot of people. Stolid has done a lot of really good work on that. He probably understands that better than anybody else in the community right now. So if you want to look for somebody on the forum that seems to know what's going on, has some of the best posts on it.
Yep.
It's moving on. So they changed the game menu. What do you think about the game menu change?
So when Epic started doing the modular builds, they made a change that makes it so that there's a part of the code that's a kind of quote-unquote lobby, and there's a different part of the code that's the content for the game. And you can have multiple sets of content for the game ready to spin up separate servers, and the lobby would be there to control it all. And this is kind of their idea for having a lobby system with servers that run. So the in-game menu has been changed to kind of reflect some of their ideas on this lobby system. When you hit escape, you actually have a chat channel, kind of. Right now, I believe it just has all the players in the level and kind of a chat screen that you can use. But the idea is that you could chat in the lobby for all these different servers without leaving the server that you're on. And that lobby would be a place where people could just hang out and wait to play a game or something like that. I'm not completely sold on their lobby system idea right now, just because I don't think it's been fleshed out to the point where I would understand what they were shooting for and think that it would work the way they are saying it would work. But I think that it's moving in a positive direction. Like right now, the in-game menu takes up the entire screen. I'm not sure how I feel about that. It used to be, or there's been different implementations where the mid-game menu has the scoreboard in it and stuff like that in previous games. I don't know where I want the in-game escape menu to go personally, but this is a step up from where it was, which was going all the way back to the menu every time you hit escape.
One of the problems that I have is, like, every time that I get a new build, the game doesn't start in full screen. Like, I have to tell it to go into full screen, and it's a lot easier to get into the settings when they're at the bottom instead of at the top. So I like it for that reason. But ultimately, I like the idea that when you can hit escape, that I have the whole workspace to do whatever I want in it. So right now, you can just chat, and that's really the only thing that you can do. But when this gets further along, I would really like to see some customization of it. So in Planet Side, which is a game that I played a lot, and I know I've talked a lot about on the podcast before, in Planet Side, if you press left alt, it will basically give you the mouse cursor, and then you can mess around with the HUD. So there's like chat boxes, and you can resize how big the chat box is. I would hope that this escape menu in the future turns into something where it could be like, okay, so I want to have my server browser up here, and I want to show these 3 different lobbies, and I want to be able to see them all, and then a slot for the server that I'm currently on, so that I could have all that chat when I press escape. Or if I want to see something else, who knows what other controls they could have in the game. But to be able to resize those and reposition them, and to just hit escape and have it there at my fingertips, and then hit escape again and go back into the game, I think would be really powerful. I don't necessarily need the whole screen for just the server chat right now, though. It's a little unnecessary. Okay, so let's move on to the new netcode. So this one is a hard one to talk about because it's very, very complicated, and I don't 100% understand myself yet what the advantages and disadvantages of the new netcode are. But here are the facts. Okay, the facts are this build, they have implemented a new method of hit detection that you can optionally turn on. To enable it, you type predict and then a number, and you can go up to 160, and that number is basically the highest ping that your client will request the server to compensate up to. So if you put 160, but your ping is actually 170, then it will only help you compensate for 160 of that ping, and then you'll still have 10 effective ping.
Right. we should emphasize, I think, that this is server authoritative ping compensation. This is not client-side ping compensation or anything like that. It's not even a mix. Basically, what you're doing is telling the server, rewind this much and see if I should have hit that person. And so if you put predict 160, for example, the server will rewind what it saw 160 milliseconds ago and see if you should have hit whatever you're aiming at. So I tried this today on one of Cafe's servers, and I had about an 80 ping, so I tried predict 80, and it was better. Like, I was actually hitting things that I thought I should have hit, but it also seemed like it was warping around the level a lot more in terms of my movement, and it also seemed like I was hitting shots where it didn't even seem to me like I should have been able to hit them.
So I have noticed some warping. I don't know if it's the server, but I do notice the warping. Another thing is that it doesn't seem to matter if you set the ping compensation to a high number. In fact, I'm not sure why you would set it below 160 if you always want it to compensate. Like, why would you want it to not compensate at higher pings? I'm not quite sure I understand what that is. So I'm personally always putting 160 in there. It feels different, but I could not enumerate to you today what the advantages of using the compensation and the disadvantages of using it are. Personally, when most of the footage that you're going to see from FragBU, like the CTF, was not compensated. And the thing is, when we're playing at FragBU, I don't notice the ping at all.
Yeah.
I can hit people with the sniper rifle, no problem. So
it should also be emphasized, I think, that Steve has said this isn't really ready, and that's why it's not turned on by default.
Yeah.
So turning it on is mostly just to test it out and see how it works. I personally found that there were enough instances where I was hitting things that I should have hit that normally miss, that I liked it, but it did have a lot of side effects that affected my game in other ways. And so I don't know if it's worth it to play with it all the time right now, but I can definitely see that it should make a positive change to everybody's gameplay. It's just a matter of them perfecting the system and getting it just right. And because it's server authoritative, there's not really an easy way to say, well, I should have hit that, and for the server to say, well, okay, it's close enough, because it's all happening on the server, and it's quick too. I mean, there weren't cases where I shot and then a few seconds later it said, oh yeah, you actually did hit that person, and it kills them. And so there can be frustrating things with ping compensation, and I'm hopeful that they'll get it right and it won't stink like other kinds of netcode.
Well, I think one of the things is that is kind of hard to describe what the difference is right now. It's probably a good thing, right?
Yeah.
When it was client-side hit detection, I could tell immediately that something was off. I was like, okay, all my shots hit, but every time I die, I'm going behind a wall. Yeah. And I knew immediately what was wrong. With this one, it's, just 2 or 3 play sessions, I still don't understand it completely. So I think that's a good thing.
Yep.
I think that means it actually works pretty well in a state that is not even close to finished already.
Yep.
That's pretty dang good, and I applaud Epic on what they've done so far.
Yep.
There's a lot of really interesting ideas in there. I'm hopeful that this will be the best netcode of any UT game.
Same here.
The bio rifle. Oh, the bio rifle.
Yes, the bio rifle.
So they made some last podcast we said I would like to see crazy changes to the bio rifle. And so last week we saw a change from Nick that says crazy changes to bio rifle. This will probably have to change. It's pretty ridiculous.
It really is. Okay, so the change that they made is basically that the primary fire of the bio rifle is a completely inaccurate rapid fire blob assault rifle, basically.
So basically they took the primary fire from excessive overkill and put it into the game. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it feels exactly like excessive overkill. And it is incredibly fun to use, I have to admit. It is just so fun to spam the crap out of that thing all around somebody. It leaves little blob landmines all around them. It puts green splat decals all over the walls. When somebody's had a battle with a biorifle and you come back to that area later, you know what happened. There is green slime all over the place, and it's hilarious. Now, personally, I kind of feel like it's a little overpowered. The reason why I feel like it's a little overpowered, I guess, is because when I'm using it against somebody, I feel like a maniac in complete control. When somebody else is using it against me, I feel like I am basically just being clobbered and instant death. And so I love to use it. It is so fun to shoot. But the effect of it is just insane.
Yeah, well, so getting down to specifics. If there's a hallway or a corridor and you're using that primary fire, they aren't coming down that corridor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for suppression,
So,
oh my god.
This is the first time that the goo gun, I feel, is actually useful at its intended role.
Yep.
Now, if I'm just in a dogfight and I'm like intentionally trying to fire it at them, it's okay, because the thing is there's that spread and it's really inaccurate, and so it's really kind of almost luck of the draw if you really get to do a lot of damage to people. Like if it's bio rifle versus link gun, I usually lose. But if it's another weapon that maybe requires distance, like if they're using the shock rifle, oh yeah, I'm gonna win that one. Because you need to get a little bit of distance with the current shock rifle to really be powerful with it. So they also changed the secondary fire. It was a lot faster and more useful.
Yeah, and the collision on it is a little bit larger than it was before.
Yeah, like
so
the
it's
blob
actually
is
easier.
bigger.
Yeah, it's easier to hit people with it. It's a little closer to the UT3 one. The only difference between them, I'd say right now, is that the UT3 one felt a little magnetic, whereas this one, you actually have to hit the person for it to stick to them. So it's a little bit improved in that way. But I mean, on the primary fire, I just think that you can leave so many little landmines around that people are constantly trying to avoid while they're fighting you, that in many cases you gain the upper hand just because there's so much going on around them. Now, if it's biorifle versus biorifle, I have no idea who wins, but I would have so much fun shooting the gun, I wouldn't really care if I died. And that seems to be the way that it goes right now. There are plenty of cases where I lose fights when I'm using the biorifle, but it's just so stinking fun to shoot that I don't care about dying.
Yeah. So long story short, it's a crazy change, and I'm happy with the crazy change. I would like to see other crazy options for it. So I thought that the web one was really cool. I'd like to see more ideas, because I still haven't seen something that puts the goo gun on par with the other weapons.
So one idea that somebody brought up is kind of similar to the way it was in Unreal Championship 2, which is that the blobs that are hanging out on the ground, they can jump towards people. And that was kind of a fun thing in Unreal Championship 2. Steve mentioned that they were thinking about playing with having them slide instead of bounce towards other people, or slide all together into big globs when they're just sitting around. So some of those things would be interesting to see on the biorifle.
Okay, so they added a couple of maps. One of them is aptly named ASDF. And this map, it's interesting. So it has a lot of the gameplay features of Spacer, but it looks like CTF Dam.
Yeah, the textures on the walls and stuff are better than the other maps. It's not a gray box, it's actually textured. It does look nice. I mean, Spacer is probably my favorite deathmatch map out of the entire series so far.
Oh, yes.
I just love all the little tricks that you can do to fake people out. It's a really fun map to play when you know like where all the jump pads are and how to do all the lift jumps and stuff like that. It's a really fun map. ASDF has many of the same things. There's some cool lift jumps that you can do. There's just little areas where you can go to fake people out, and I just like that in a deathmatch map. It's probably no accident that I'm not a huge fan of deathmatch in previous games. In this game, I mostly play it because that's what everyone else is playing, and I want to be able to play test the game. But in previous games, I was totally into CTF. I would always play CTF. This is really the first time that I've dug into free-for-all deathmatch. The Spacer is one map that I really think is cool for free-for-all. and ASDF looks like it'll be one too. That's just a good map for that.
Yeah, I think that they're doing really good with giving players the room to move around in a lot of these deathmatch maps. And it's deceptively complicated. Like, the first time that I ran through it, I was like, okay, so it's basically like a giant diamond. But once you get into, like, each of those specific areas and where you can go in each of the four corners of it, basically, it's actually really complicated. There's also a couple of interesting tricks that I'm sure you'll all find out on your own. So there's a couple of really obvious wall dodges. But another one that might not jump out to people immediately because there hasn't been another spot in any other map that you can do this, but there is actually a slide trick there now too. So there's a jump pad that's over by the shield belt, and if you go off the jump pad and then you slide when you land, there's a little ledge that you can go under and you'll go back to where you started. So that's kind of cool. I have to play it a little bit to see where it's going. I like the iteration they've been doing on the maps.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch, and ASDF looks good, and Overlord is one where there's just a crazy amount of blueprints in the map to do various different things to change the map.
Yep. Okay, and then another map is Overlord. So this is a crazy map that has a ton of blueprints in it and is insane. Unfortunately, you can't play it this week because they forgot to cook it and it didn't make it into this build.
Yep. But they did go over it on the Twitch live stream this past week. You could actually go and watch that live stream to see how the map works. But it's really interesting because there's a lot of blueprints that have different triggers, and you can change the way that you get through the map by hitting some of these different triggers. You can trap people in different areas. It's basically like taking all of the little gimmicks that are in all the UT maps and kind of combining them in different ways into a single map. And it actually turns out pretty cool when you're playing it.
Yep. Well, I like that you could have a map it's a deathmatch map, but that one deathmatch map is so significantly different that you could almost have a server that's just that map.
Yeah,
It's
true. Because it's different every time you play it, right? I mean, it all depends on what triggers people hit and different things like that. It makes it more dynamic. It makes it a little bit more random. For competitive play, this is probably going to be a terrible map, but for casual play, really fun.
Yeah. Well, and this goes into one of the community topics that I wanted to go into today, and that is like the overall longevity of the game. So something that I've been watching really careful over the past few weeks is Quake Live. So I absolutely love Quake Live. I like the changes that they made to it. Don't hurt me, but I really like them, even the loadouts. But I'm only playing it casually.
Yeah.
And I really have no intention of ever getting like competitive at Quake like I have been in the past with Unreal Tournament. And I've been watching the stats, and it looks to me like I'm not the only one. The first day there was like 8,000 people playing it. It was like heyday of Quake 3 Arena numbers. And now it's down, and in a year from now, I don't think it's going to be terribly interesting. And I don't know if I'm going to be playing it 6 months from now. Like right now, I kind of play it if I want to relax. Like Hearthstone is not a relaxing game. It's actually quite stressful. So I played Quake 3. But am I still going to be playing it like 2 months from now? I don't know. We'll see. I'm afraid that that's going to happen to Unreal Tournament 4. I'm afraid that the game is going to come out and everybody's going to go, wow, this is the best Unreal Tournament game that they've ever made. And then 3 months go by and it's a dead game. There are really two things that they've talked about that are going to counteract this. The first one is the competitive features in the lobby. Beyond Unreal can set up a lobby channel and we can find people. That's something that even if the game gets small, will allow those hardcore players to find the match that they want really easily. But I think that the other side of it is the custom content, right? Things that are frankly not competitive. I hate to say it because I really like the competitive side of the game, especially CTF, but chances are most people aren't going to be playing CTF, sorry. They're going to be playing some sort of strange amalgamation of mutators, just like in every other UT.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're making maps like Overlord, they're basically making the kind of cheesy, gimmicky stuff that the community would make, I think is a really encouraging sign.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that need to be done, I think, to make this game played. One of them is just supporting the game for a long time. And if Epic can actually keep supporting the game, I think that it'll do fairly well. There's also the competitive side, which I think that Epic has commented on the game needing, which is the ability to run leagues and have different rules and things like that, that I think that they're interested in doing, and I think that'll help as well. But custom content is one area where this has made previous UT games thrive. One of the biggest failings of Unreal Tournament 3 was that running servers with custom content for almost a year was just really challenging, and especially when you wanted people to join organically and get that custom content, there were just so many issues with downloading it to them and all that kind of stuff, and I think that really hurt UT3 in the long run. It's nice to see that they're doing things that look like what the community would do, but it's also a really encouraging sign that they're talking now about what's the best way to get custom content in the game, to make it easy to download content and all that different kind of stuff. When that is a focus, then I have a lot of hope for the game. Now, it's still going to take some work, for sure, but these are encouraging signs that this game actually could be very successful, and I personally really hope that it will be.
The second community topic that we wanted to talk about, last episode we talked about some of the concept art. This week we wanted to talk about some of the music.
Yeah, so Archer has a thread right now where he's done basically some samples of some music that he's been working on. There's Destroyer and Abyss and Flow and Orbit and Impact Hammer. And we'll put a link to this thread in the description of this video. This music is just flat out awesome. When I was listening to Orbit, I was thinking I could be playing any floating island map and have this music playing and it would feel awesome. Destroyer was also like just a mind-blowingly good piece of music. And then Shivaxi is someone that's been doing he's done at least one collaboration with somebody on an excellent work there. But another thing that Shivaxi did this week is he made a cappella versions of some classic Unreal Tournament songs. At the request of certain people in IRC, he put these a cappella versions of the music to playing the levels or in the menu in Unreal Tournament. It is just hilarious to watch. I think everybody needs to watch this. We'll put links to those too, but it is just so funny.
Yeah, I like what I'm seeing on the music side. One of the things that's surprised me is how well the music people have created the old UT feel in their songs.
Yeah.
So the technology and tools that they had available to them when they made the original Unreal Tournament was very limited. I mean, everything was in UMX, which is just crazy that the guys that made that music were able to do what they did back then.
Yeah.
Now we have all these tools that makes it so much easier to make music and to make completely different sounds from that, and yet even with the new sounds, people have been able to keep that old feel in it. And I really like that. I know for myself, because I'm an audio guy. I've been a DJ in the local area for a long time. I've done a few productions. You can go to soundcloud.com/TWD, hear some of my stuff. And then I edit the podcasts, which you might be surprised how much work it takes to edit the podcasts and master it and stuff. Something that I have noticed on the music side that I would like to see, and this is a problem with anybody with music, but it's really hard to get music artists to collaborate with each other, mostly because they've never done it before and they don't know how. But the cool thing is that we have so many tools available to us now, right? The amount of online space to upload something is basically unlimited. So if you want to upload a gigabyte zip file of uncompressed stems, you can. And I think you should, you know?
Well, it's nice to let other people try to riff on your stuff. And I know that there's a little bit of friction against wanting other people to mess with something that you feel artistic ownership of, but you never know what other people could do with what you create. Now, with concept art and stuff, you can't really stop somebody from grabbing that, doing a paint over on it. And I think that kind of thing should be encouraged. I mean,
and it's worked really well. It's so far in the forums with doing paint overs and stuff.
And I feel like Epic has been very encouraging of trying to get people that are drawing concept art to take what other people are doing and kind of incorporate into another design that looks more like what they're thinking. For example, in the Necris thread, you can see some people from Epic trying to encourage people to take the designs that are in there and turn them into something that looks more like their vision of a Necris. I think that that's a good encouragement. I would like to see the same thing on the music side, and I know that Archer has done some collaborations with a couple of other people. I know Shavaxi has done collaborations with people, and there's other people that have been working on music, and I honestly haven't gone in and checked out everything that's out there on the forums right now, but I am impressed by the things that I'm hearing. I think that it's awesome to find a piece of music that you could take and drop into Unreal Tournament right now, the original Unreal Tournament, on any level, and it would feel like any piece of music from that game. And people are actually doing that right now, and I think that's cool.
That's all I have to say about that. All right, so that's all we have time for this week. As always, like and subscribe to our channel. Have all of the links in the video description, and join us for Frag BU next Friday.
Yes.
See ya.